Adeayo, the second back to the episode. How are you
Uh-huh.
feeling?
I feel good. I feel grateful. Last week there was a lot of positive feedbacks. I read some of the comments, which I don't normally do, just to get feedback and see how people are receiving the content. And a lot of positive feedbacks, and I'm grateful to everyone who watched. And it's going to get better. So let's do this.
All right. So over the last week, many Nigerian artists came up with their own genres of music.
Bro, it's chaos right now. Afro chaos. Afro chaos.
Afro chaos.
Yeah.
So I don't know what exactly is Afrobeats.
To understand what Afrobeats or why West African mainstream music is called Afrobeats, I think we should maybe take a pause and talk about Afrobeats, Fela's Afrobeats, and why it is called Afrobeats. So now, Fela's Afrobeats, according to Fela's drummer, the legendary Tony Allen, the name Afrobeat wasn't created by Fela himself. It wasn't coined by Fela. It was coined by a show promoter by the name of Mr. Raymond Aziz. So when Fela did an hybrid, the fusion of jazz, funk, and highlife to create what is now known as Afrobeat. Then he used to call it highlife jazz. So he used to perform in Ghana with his Kola Lobito's band, and Mr. Raymond Aziz was the person who used to take them to Ghana. He was the show promoter, right? So he thought, okay, this highlife jazz is not original. Highlife is already a genre on its own. Jazz is already a genre on its own, so it doesn't sound original. So he wanted to create something that sounds unique, that is pop and that sounds catchy. So he thought, okay, let's call it Afrobeat, and that's how the name Afrobeat came about. And now for Afrobeats, right, there's no documented history who came up with the name or at what point the name was created. But Nigerian mainstream artists, Nigerian mainstream pop artists, and even Ghanaian mainstream pop artists have always called their music Afrobeats since the early 2000s and even in the late 90s, right? So the word Afrobeats stems from Afrobeats, and the S there was added to capture the plurality of influences now being merged to create Afrobeats, to create Nigerian and West African mainstream pop music, because Fela did a hybrid of high life jazz and funk, but right now we have more influences, hip hop, R&B, what have you. So the S captures that plurality. So the first time in documented history the word Afrobeats was used was in the UK by DJ Abranti on Choice FM. To promote his Afrobeat show. He wanted a name that captures the music coming out of West Africa, the mainstream music coming out of West Africa. And at that point, we had Fuse ODG, making waves in UK with the song Azonto. And then we had Whiskey, Davido, P-Square, The Band, Subaba. The music they were making was called Afrobeat. So Afrobeat gave Nigerian mainstream and West African mainstream music a kind of codification, a kind of uniformity to which to be able to easily address the music we're making, to easily tag the music we're making, and that's how the word Afrobeat came to what it is known to be today, and the whole popularity it's getting now stems from that moment in the early 2000s.
So has any Afrobeat artist created a genre?
Oh, interestingly, you cannot effectively create a new genre. So just a little story, right? So just this morning, right, I was on Twitter and I saw a post, and the post was a guy playing an instrument called patan, and drum, right? He was playing it and cows were just standing watching him, right? So I never saw that instrument before. That was the first time I was seeing that instrument or something like that. So I went online to check what is patan, what is and drum, what is angpan, different names it is called. Angpan, Patam, and I saw, okay, fine, it was, according to some people, it was created in 1976 by a particular Swiss, by a Swiss guy called Felix, something like that. So it was created in 1976. But if you go deeper into the research, you're going to see it was said it came about in the early 1900s in Trinidad and Tobago, when the slaves were not allowed to use drums as a form of revolution because they were drumming for revolution because of slavery, right? So they banned them from using drums, so they needed something to drum on. So they started drumming on drums, on steel drums they used in the farm. So during that period, there's a particular person, Eli, a particular man by the name of Eli. He now refined that drum to create different sounds and to achieve different frequencies, right? So that's how the steel drum came about. So basically, there's nothing you want to make now that the line cannot be drawn back in time, like back to the past where someone has made something similar before, because music has effectively peaked. So there's nothing you want to make now that you cannot find traces of it in the past. So for you to create a genre, you have to create corresponding elements to go with it. So what Afrobeat artists are doing is fusion, right? And that's what we've always done in Afrobeats. We're taking different sounds from all over the world, bringing it back to Nigeria and adding that Nigerian elements to it, that African touch to it. So if the likes of P Square and Subaba, when they made Busybody, which had significant hip-hop influence, and a song like No One Like You or If Love Is a Crime that had significant R&B influences, if those songs qualify as Afrobeats, then whatever we're doing right now is Afrobeat. It's just genre, it's just fusion, right? It's just fusing different sound into Nigerian elements to create a unique perspective, to broaden Afrobeat's creative boundaries, and which is what the S stands for. So let's even say 10 years from now, a Nigerian artist travels to Asia, maybe let's say Tibet or Vietnam, and gets influenced by Tibetan or Vietnamese indigenous music. And it takes that sound, and maybe not even Vietnamese pop music or indigenous music, and it takes that sound and brings it back to Nigeria and adds that African element to it. What he has done is Afrofusion, it's the Afrobeat. Is he going to now put Afro-Vietnamese or Afro-Tibet in front of it? No. So if what P Square and the Banj and Subaba did back in the day, if what Star Plus did with their music back in the day can qualify as Afrobeats, then whatever you're doing now is Afrobeats. But what you're just doing is that you're just showing the endless boundaries that Afrobeats can attain and the endless creative stretch Afrobeats can attain. That's what's going on.
Yeah. What's responsible for this new wave of genre naming in Afrobeats?
So last week we talked about how artists like to feel special. If you can remember, like artists like to feel special. They like to chase distinction, chase exceptionalism. They want to feel like whatever they are doing is the first time anyone is doing it.
Yeah.
That no one has ever done this before. That they want to feel like they want to separate themselves from the rest of the industry. In chase of exceptionalism, and that is the narcissism in artists. They are narcissists, and it is something that is maybe we can call it a common denominator with artists, and it is even something that inspires and drives their art. So it is not actually a bad thing. But so in that need to feel special, they want to create a tag for their music. A tag they feel like, I think this captures the sound I make. You understand? Like this maybe captures the music I make, and I don't want to be called Afrobeats because that's what everyone is called. Those are one of the reasons, right? Another one, I'll say, they want to feel like they invented something. They don't feel like they're the ground zero of something. Now you cannot say Afrobeats without calling Fela. You understand? You have to mention Fela. So they want to feel like maybe they don't want to be in the shadow of Fela, because at the end of the day, maybe not even be in the shadow of Fela, right? They want to maybe attain that kind of level, that kind of legacy. Because when you use Afrobeats, there's no person that is the ground zero of Afrobeats, right? What we have is different individuals, different superstars who have contributed to the evolution of the sound to what it is today. So they want to feel like they want to be the ground zero of something. They want to be the one that invented something. So when they say Afro this, it's going to be I am the ground zero of this. And lastly, this is not entirely one of the reasons for the fragmentization and this genre naming, but it is not excluded from it to an extent. I think we live in a woke world right now. Yeah, we live in a woke world where there's a lot of naming of concepts. People are breaking down concepts and renaming them. Just look at gender, like the countless genders we have right now. Just look at the whole idea of like sexuality, the way it's been broken down and renamed and everything like that. So people are coming up with concepts, fancy concepts that even intrinsically carry zero meaning, right? But they feel like it has to be validated because that's the world we live in right now. So people, I think that's kind of inspiring, or maybe even shaping the way artists perceive music, and they want to come up with original, fresh concepts, even though intrinsically those concepts are just meaningless. Yeah, so I think that's what's up.
No, nothing is new under the sun anyway.
Yeah.
So is this genre naming disadvantageous the growth of Afrobeats?
Yes. This whole fragmentization, it is disadvantageous to the growth of Afrobeat. Now, one thing we need to appreciate, right, is that the success of Afrobeat, where Afrobeat is right now, cannot be disassociated with the name Afrobeats. Where Nigerian music is right now, where Nigerian mainstream pop music has attained, the level it has reached, the height it has attained, the parts of the world it has reached, cannot be disassociated with the name Afrobeat. That name Afrobeat, that tag, it was what gave the music uniformity. So it was what allowed people to be able to appreciate the culture coming out of Nigeria beyond just the music itself. It codified it. It gave it a bit of representation, that oneness for you to be able to relate with it, that in a way that even transcends beyond music. So that let's look at it this way. Dancehall, right? Dancehall give Jamaicans don't find themselves in diaspora in the UK, in US, and what have you. The dancehall give them identity. It gives them a cultural export to be able to take to the rest of the world and say, this is our music, this is part of our culture, and in this music you find elements of our culture. So when you think dancehall, there are things that comes to your mind, the way it will sound, the way the artist would act, possibly even the way the video would look like, the things that would be there, the kind of people you expect to see inside that video, the way they would dress, right? So dancehall gives Jamaicans, it gives them, and even Caribbeans, people from the Caribbean, it gives them an identity, something to be proud of. That's what the word Afrobeats give Nigerian mainstream music and West African pop music. It gave us an identity that Nigerians in diaspora, African in diaspora can relate with and market the music. So now if we have this Afro this, Afro that, Afro emo, Afro rave, Afro R&B, everybody just coming up with different names and slapping Afro in front of it, we're going to have a fragmentized industry where the industry as a whole cannot move forward, right? So there's one. Another reason why it is injurious to the growth of Afrobeat is that the movement right now is built off the hard work of people before us. So if these people could accept the tag Afrobeat and use their own profile, their own success to propel that movement, now we're short changing it because we want to sound clever, want to sound like we're coming up with something new. That means we're short changing the future generation, and this is harmful. So let's look at Latino music industry. That reggaeton is their pop music, right? And under reggaeton, they do a lot of stuff. Like the people who rap, who do predominantly hip hop, like Bad Bunny. There are people who sing, or people with even alternative leanings. Someone like Rosalia. There's someone like Karol G who makes R&B pop music. There's someone like Jill Balvin, Ozuna. They don't go about trying to fragmentize it and come up with clever or fancy subgenres and say I'm reggaeton hip hop and reggaeton hotel and reggaeton high life, stuff like that. You understand? So it's quote unquote. So it's not like they don't run away from that reggaeton or Latino tag. But what Afrobeat artists are doing is that they're not just only coming up with concepts, they are running away from the Afrobeat tag and saying, oh, I'm not an Afrobeat artist. What everybody does is Afrobeat. Me, what I do is Afrodis. So now you confuse an international audience that are just beginning to properly embrace the music. And this is why it's very, very injurious and disadvantageous to the good of Afrobeat.
Speaking of the variety in Latino music,
yeah.
Would you say that Afrobeats will limit an artist to just making a particular kind of sound?
Good. This is where Nigerian artists need to sit down and evaluate the music they make. And not just that, and also understand how to place their music, their songs in the right genre. Now, that you're a Nigerian or that you're an Afrobeat artist doesn't limit you from making any other genre. You understand? So, for example, now you've been a Nigerian, you've been an Afrobeat artist, you can make EDM. You understand what I'm saying? You can make EDM, and if you make EDM, that means if you make EDM in a traditional form of EDM, the production, the composition, the progression are traditional EDM. You do not alter them to fit African dynamics, right? But you even still, your language, your lyrics, they were written in Yoruba and Pidgin English, and you spoke Pidgin English, or you speak Pidgin English and Yoruba in that song. But the core foundation of that song is still EDM in the arrangement. That is still EDM. That's not Afrobeat, you understand? That you make an R&B song in Igbo doesn't stop it from being R&B if the core elements of that song is still R&B, right? So you don't need to create an entire new identity for the song if you understand what you're making. But now, if you take EDM elements, right, and you take African elements, right, and you now make the African element more significant, more pronounced than the EDM elements, right? You now take the African drums, African style progression, African lamba, our style of delivery, our melodies, right? The way we sound, then it now overshadows the primary EDM element. It becomes Afrobeats because now it's a fusion of EDM and African element. So that is Afrobeats. There's no need for you to say Afro fusion or you can say Afro fusion self. There's no need for you to say Afro EDM. You understand? Because then Afro EDM, by the nature of Afrobeat, is all automatically under Afrobeat. So now we have to appreciate the fact that there's a possibility that the Western world will model up whatever will make here as Afrobeat. And I think this is the primary fear of our artists. And that's why they feel the need to come up with concepts that better explains their music. According to them, they believe it better explains their music. But what they need to do is that they have the platform to be able to educate the Western world and say that I'm a Nigerian artist doesn't mean everything I do is Afrobeat. This song is not Afrobeat. This song is dancehall. This song is not Afrobeat. This song is hip hop. This song is R&B. You understand? The fact that I'm speaking Pidgin, the fact that I'm speaking Igbo doesn't mean it's not R&B. It's just R&B and call it what it is. I'm an Afrobeat artist, but this song is R&B. So it's about you're not limited by being a Nigerian. You're not limited by being an Afrobeat artist. What limits you is your inability to better classify your own songs.
All right. So, but some of them are adamant and say, my sound is what it's called. But is there really a need to create a new word to replace Afrobeat?
Right? So this is where it all boils down to. This is where the whole conversation boils down to. And this is where we have to ask ourselves like serious questions like, okay, do we need to create a new word to replace Afrobeat? Again, as I mentioned that the success of Nigerian mainstream music cannot be disassociated with the word Afrobeat. Now, if we create a new word to replace Afrobeat, we have to understand that that new word would have to carry the properties of Afrobeat. The word, not just the music, the word. And now it has to explain and capture Nigerian mainstream music the way the word Afrobeat captures and explains Nigerian mainstream music. Right? So now, Afrobeat, African, beats, drums, right? So our identity, we're Africans. Drums is a recurring theme in African music, a common denominator in African music. Afrobeat perfectly captures this, right? With the S captures the plurality of imported sounds, right? Imported mainstream sounds we're making. It captures it. So whatever new sound we're going to create has to pack these elements as well. Can we do that? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. Secondly now, Afrobeats, the word, that tagline, carries cultural impact, carries soft power, has reached different parts of the world, allow people to relate with Nigerian music at a higher level, in a way that even goes beyond our music, in a way that's touched on culture, lifestyle, taking Nigerian soft power all around the world. So whatever word we're going to create, whatever new term will be coined to replace Afrobeat, it is going to begin its own journey. So Afrobeat has been on this journey since like the early 2010s, the early 2000s, 2010s, like Whiskey, Davido started rising internationally, right? And the world started becoming more familiar with the global audience. Now, whatever new term we're going to use to replace Afrobeat is going to begin that journey as well. To replace that journey of getting the same cultural impact the word Afrobeat has. The cultural impact, the uniformity, the awesomeness, the oneness, the codification. It has to do that. Can a new term achieve this? Does it make sense for us to shortchange ourselves in search of a new word? So now the whole idea is that Afrobeat is lazy. The word is lazy. The word is unimaginative. The word shoehorns artists into a box, which is not true. None of this term is true. They say the word was imposed on us by foreign entities, which is also not true. The word Afrobeat stemmed from West Africa, Nigeria, and Ghana. That is where the word came out from. It was popularized by the success of our music internationally. Even the DJ Abrancy, that was the first person to use this word in documented, in the UK, in documented history. It has African roots, I think Ghanaian roots, right? So this word is not disassociated from our culture, from our identity. So which term do we want to come up with that better captures Nigerian mainstream music than Afrobeat, right? And now, so if we do discard Afrobeat, if we let these artists all run away from the Afrobeat tag the way they want to do, in search of new ideas, in search of new music, in search of new term that better describes their music, right? So what we're going to have is Afro this, Afro that. We're not going to have Afrobeat to the world. We're going to have Afro this to the world, depending on the artist that is popping at that time. If it's Rema that is popping, we're going to have Afro Rave to the world. If it's Burna Boy that is popping, we'll have Afro Fusion to the world. If it's If it's Charlie Poppy that is the global star, we're going to have maybe, although it doesn't call its music that, but maybe Afro piano or Yahoo piano to the world. So it fragmentizes the industry. We don't have Afrobeats to the world. What happens is that the industry suffers, Nigerian brand suffers, Nigerian pop culture suffers, our soft power suffers, and we do not have a thriving, strong industry to pass down to the future generation. And that's facts on it.